Hello and welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. This week, does literary criticism exist in Mythic Europe? How do Magi know what to read next? Imagine your magus helps out another covenant and, in thanks, they let your character study from their library for a season. In the real world, the story guide hands you a sheet of titles, each marked with level and quality, and you pick the one you'd like your magus to read. What's happening in Mythic Europe that is being extrapolated by this process of you getting a sheet of numbers? There are, I think, two possibilities. The first is that, like a librarian, you're assessing the books. As a non-specialist, you don't really understand some of the data you're looking at, but you can grasp enough to know the value of the book in comparison to other books. You can assess its reading level, intended audience, and physical quality. The other possibility is that you know the titles by their reputations. Medieval people used to hunt around monasteries looking for pieces of Livy or Aristotle, and they didn't need to see the book to know that it was considered a capstone of study for their area of interest. This second model requires you to be aware of titles before you can read them. This can happen in two ways. In some subjects, like classic English literature, there is a corpus of work that interconnects so that by studying part, you are drawn to the other parts. As Arnold Bennett notes, if you read Charles Lamb, you are introduced to the various people in his social circle, and, through his murderous sister, to Shakespeare, and from there you can work up and down the canon. The other way is for your character to have read book reviews. Some of the earliest books of review are attempts to systematically describe every book of note in a particular field. These are, unhelpfully, often called bibliotheca in their title, which means library. They are backward-looking, reviewing the great works of the past rather than contemporary writers. The earliest journals of review might already exist in Mythic Europe because they were not academic, they were mercantile. The earliest journals were basically trade catalogues put out by bookshops. Over time, these became increasingly large and were sectioned into genres, and then people not interested in select fields began to demand journals that only included material suited for their own specialisation. Certain critics, independent of the booksellers, were paid for their unbiased advice on the value of potential purchases. Journals in which people discussed ideas were a related idea because review journals contained excerpts, but the two only merged far later. Journals of review might exist either because libraries have to put out catalogues to tempt custom for loan or sale, or because House McCurray needs to be able to source material to fill requests. Players have noted that Tractatus are numerous and useful in the current edition of Ars Magica, and it seems possible that a magus might make a living by helping others sort through these so they know which ones to read. Now for some story hooks. An annoyed Flambeau magus is seeking the identity of a reviewer who has given his summer a poor score. Sensibly, the reviewer uses a pseudonym, and his friends are careful not to let information slip. The Flambeau hires the player characters to find more clues because they have a reputation for greater stability of character than he does. A magus published an acclaimed book some years ago, but the player characters discover an earlier, lost work which is word identical. If they expose the plagiarist, they gain his enmity, but they may make allies of the original author's descendants. They could, instead, attempt blackmail. The player characters discover a unique, excellent book miscovered in a Covenant library. Do they make an offer for it, or expose its higher quality to the current owners? If they draw attention to the book, they invite cautious harassment from their hosts. The book, you see, was salvaged from a fallen Covenant and deliberately miscovered. These books are usually held in a section to which visitors may not go, but this one was accidentally shelved by its false title by a non-magical librarian. The player characters may piece together why this is happening by researching the book and discovering a review in a catalogue for the Fallen Covenant.